delicious. Today, I'm going to teach you how to make chocolate Paximadia. Chocolate Paximadia are basically biscotti. They're going to be vegan. This recipe is going to be vegan, which means we're going to have no dairy in here, and it's going to be made with olive oil, a light olive oil. We're going to also put some pistachios in them. We're going to flavor them with some orange. Of course, you can customize it to however you want. You can leave out the pistachios and just put more chocolate chips. You could add some pecans, walnuts, almonds, whatever you like in here. They're going to be so delicious, the perfect cookie to dunk in your coffee. Let's go over the ingredients so we can get started. For the wet ingredients, we're going to need some pure vanilla extract, some fresh orange juice. This is light olive oil. We have some granulated sugar and some brown sugar. This is coffee and a little bit of baking soda. For the dry ingredients, we have some all-purpose flour, some orange zest, a little bit of salt, some cocoa powder, this is Dutch processed, and some baking powder. And over here we have some semi-sweet chocolate chips and some pistachios that have been shelled. This all starts with the wet ingredients. I am using orange juice because I love the combination of chocolate and orange. But if you don't want any orange flavor in it, leave the zest and the juice out and just use the same amount of coffee that you would orange juice. So we're doing half a cup of orange juice and half a cup of coffee. You can just do a whole cup of coffee. Very simple. If you want to leave the coffee out, do water. No problem. But coffee is great because it really brings out the chocolatiness of the chocolate biscotti and anything chocolate. Really, when you're making, if you add a little bit of coffee to it, it wakes it up and it just makes it even more chocolatey and better. So don't leave it out unless you're allergic to caffeine or something like that. To the mixing bowl, I'm going to add half a cup of orange juice, a cup of light olive oil. You can substitute vegetable oil for this if you prefer. Half a cup of coffee. Now you don't have to brew a whole pot of coffee for this. You can just mix some instant coffee and some cool water and you're good to go. But if you do brew coffee and you have some leftover, this is a great recipe to use it in. Next, we're going to add the sugar, the granulated and the brown sugar, and a teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. And the one thing that I forgot to do was to add the baking soda. So when you add the baking soda, don't do what I'm going to do. It's best to dilute it in the orange juice so that way you don't get that little bite of baking soda that sometimes ends up in baked goods when it's not properly mixed in. I'm just going to put it in right now with the wet ingredients, but I highly recommend that you mix it with the orange juice and then you add it. Next, we're just going to whisk together all of the dry ingredients. And before I add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients, I'm just going to roughly chop the pistachios. So you can put as many pistachios as you want in this. And as a matter of fact, you can use salted pistachios or unsalted. I have slightly salted pistachios because I do like that combination of sweet and a little kick of salt. So I am going to roughly chop these using my knife, but you could pass these through a food processor if you wanted to. So I like for this to be a very rustic biscotti, so I'm going to leave my pistachios like this. Some are cut in half, some are whole, some are chopped up small. I like that combination of textures. I'm going to set it aside. Now I'm going to slowly add the dry ingredients to the wet ingredients, but before I do that, since I didn't whisk in my baking soda with the orange juice, I'm just going to quickly whisk everything together using a whisk just to make sure that everything has been combined properly. Once all of the dry ingredients are incorporated, you could go in and add your chocolate chips and the pistachios. So you could add a half a cup of pistachios or a whole cup. It's just up to you how much you want in there. Now go ahead and transfer the dough to a work surface that's lightly floured with all-purpose flour. Roll it onto the flour so that way the stickiness sort of goes away. Cut it into 2 equal pieces. Now at this point you could roll both pieces into logs that are about ½ an inch thick and about 12 to 13 inches long, and then you can just bake them both off and make biscotti, or you can make half and freeze half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one portion of the dough because we do not need to have all these biscottis at home, and I'm going to put them on a sheet of parchment paper. I'm going to put it on a sheet of parchment paper, and I'm just going to flatten it out, wrap it up, Once I'm done with this, I'm going to wrap it in plastic wrap, label it, and put it in my freezer. It'll stay fresh in the freezer for about 2 months. Not that it'll last that long in my house anyway, but it'll be ready in there. And then when I want to bake it off, I'm just going to take it out of the freezer and leave it at room temperature. If I'm very organized, then I will thaw it out overnight in my refrigerator and then leave it on the counter until it reaches room temperature, and then continue with whatever I'm going to do right now, form it into a log and bake it, and then slice it and bake them again. So I formed one of the portions into a log, and I'm going to transfer it onto a baking tray that's lined with parchment paper. And then I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. It is going to spread a little bit while baking. Now at this point, you can top it with some more ground pistachios. You can put some sesame seeds on top, or what I like to do is sprinkle some granulated sugar on top. It's going to give it a nice shininess to the top and a little hint of sweetness. And you could even press the sugar in a little bit. Turbinado sugar would be great, but I never have that at home, and I am not an advocate of going out to buy one ingredient to use a tiny bit of in recipes. We use granulated sugar, that's what I have, so that's what I'm going to sprinkle on top of this. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm going to put this in the center rack and let it bake for about 25 minutes or until a toothpick that's inserted in the center comes out clean. You want it to not be doughy at all in the center. Then when it comes out, you want to let it cool at least 10 minutes. Then we're going to go ahead and slice it. Once it comes out of the oven, let it cool for 10 minutes. Then go ahead and put it on a cutting board or on a work surface and slide the parchment paper off. It should come off easily. And you can use that same parchment paper, put it back onto the baking tray, and now it's time to cut them. Now you can cut them as thick as you like. I like to also do this in a diagonal. It's also a good idea to keep a paper towel handy to constantly wipe your knife. If your knife is dirty, it's going to cause the biscotti to crumble. And then place them on the baking tray standing up. So put them on their side. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Place the baking tray in the center rack of the oven and let them bake until they're perfectly dry and crisp. That's going to take about 25 to 30 minutes. So the chocolate biscotti came out of the oven. Once they come out of the oven, you want them to cool completely. Now you can bake them as crisp as you want them, or you could even bake them so they can be a little tiny bit softer or chewier. Now the Paximadia or biscotti are usually very dry and crisp, but it's all up to you. I like mine a little bit undercooked, or I should say they're still fully cooked, but a slight bit soft. So again, it's up to you. Mine baked for 25 minutes at 350, but if you want them to be drier and crisper, then lower the temperature to 325 degrees Fahrenheit and let them bake all the way up to 40 minutes. Keep a close eye on them because you do not want them to burn. Let them cool completely. Make a cup of Greek coffee. Put them on a platter and call some friends over because these are delicious. It is time to take a bite, and the best way for me to eat these, I love to dunk them in my coffee. I have a cup of Greek coffee here, and it is time to do the best part of making these videos, tasting them. This is so good. Chocolate and coffee are just like a match made in heaven. The flavor combination is amazing. It's so good. The chocolate and the salted pistachios go very well together. The little bits of chocolate chips that are speckled throughout the cookie are just perfect, especially if you get one in your bite. I think you guys are gonna love it. You can go on over to the website, dimitrasdishes.com, to print it out. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. And also let me know what else you'd like to learn how to make next. Thank you guys so much for spending time with me today. I'll see you all next time. Yes,